The top business stories, live from the Sky Newsroom. UK retailers shore up their cybersecurity following high-profile attacks on M&S and the Co-op. Deliberately false, Elon Musk angrily denies reports that Tesla have been looking to replace him as their chief executive. Plus, a boost for the high street as Ikea opens the doors at its new flagship store on London's Oxford streets. Very good morning. Welcome to Business Live on this Thursday with me, Darren McCaffrey. Well, after two high-profile cyber incidents in the last week, major UK retailers will be desperately looking at how to shore up their cyber defences today. The Co-op was forced to shut down part of its IT system yesterday after discovering an attempted hack, and it comes just days after Marks & Spencer was hit by a serious cyber attack which affected its operations for more than a week. It's thought that M&S may have been hacked by a group of notorious cybercriminals known as Scattered Spider. Well, let's speak to our science and technology reporter, Mickey Carroll, who's with me here in the newsroom. A very good morning to you. Let's just start with this sense that it does seem to be happening more and more, these cyber attacks on some of big brands in Britain that we're very familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2 attacks in a week is pretty significant on some of Britain's biggest retailers. And I guess the problem is, as our kind of security gets more robust across businesses in Britain and around the world, the tools that these cyber criminals use are also getting more kind of efficient and more robust, and their techniques, their tactics are evolving as well to constantly bypass security measures that are put in companies like M&S and Co-op. But it is worth saying that Co-op's security systems clearly did work because they actually managed to stop the attack that was kind of planned for them. They noticed that cyber criminals were trying to get into their systems and shut down the bits that they were trying to get into before they were breached.
And what's fascinating about this, there's often, I mean, I don't know very much about technology, but from what I've read is that, you know, these kind of viruses, if you like, or they find an open door and they get into the system, and then sometimes it may take days or weeks for them to actually launch an attack. So they have multiplied inside. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really kind of interesting, especially with the group that we think is linked to all of this, or especially linked to the M&S attack, is the way that they get into the system. So this group is known specifically for exploiting human vulnerabilities. So those moments where you're a bit kind of stressed and you're logging on quite quickly to something, or you get a text from someone pretending to be IT support and you click on the link, that's what they're doing. That's how they're getting into these major corporations and major businesses.
And just in terms of this group, I mean, what are they after? Is it simply money? Because I read that often companies do just in the end pay out.
Yeah, I mean, so this group, they're called Scattered Spider. That's a name that was given to them by a cybersecurity firm a few years ago when they kind of became really notorious. They are very financially motivated. So you have different groups, you have kind of different categories of cyber attackers. So you have nation-state attackers, and then those kind of the smaller financially motivated groups, and these are one of them. So their biggest, most infamous hack was a few years ago. They hacked MGM, who run the Caesars casinos in Las Vegas, and they managed to shut down the casino operations for long enough that Caesars paid them $15 million just to get their systems back online. So they're incredibly financially motivated.
And just very finally, Mickey, I mean, at the end of the day, this is always going to be a tug of war, isn't it, effectively, between the cyber criminals and companies trying to kind of keep ensuring that they're ahead of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, these groups are evolving their tactics as quickly as security companies are evolving their firewalls. And I think what's really key is it's not just about, when you talk about companies shoring up their defences now, they won't just be looking at, you know, firewalls and logins and things like that. They'll also be trying to make sure that their employees are incredibly vigilant to things like Teams calls that they weren't expecting, or people that they're not expecting to be on meetings. Those are the things that people really need to look out for.
Trying to deal with those human vulnerabilities that you talked about. Mick, fascinating discussion. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Mickey Carroll there. We're just going to bring you some breaking news coming into us, and it's from Merseyside Police. They're saying that they have arrested a teenage boy following a double stabbing in Kirby last night. It happened at 8:25, where armed police were called to Whitefield Drive in Westvale to reports of 2 teenagers being stabbed. A 15-year-old boy suffered a number of stab wounds to the body, and a 14-year-old girl suffered a single stab wound to the chest. Both are said to be in a serious but stable condition in hospital, and their injuries are not believed to be life-threatening. So that is coming in from Merseyside Police, that they have arrested a teenage boy following a double stabbing in Kirby last night, in which 2 people, a 15-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl, suffered injuries, and both are in a serious but stable condition in hospital. And we'll have more on that story at midday here on Sky News. Let's return now to the business news, because the chairman of Tesla has denied reports that board members had looked into finding a replacement for Elon Musk, the company's current chief executive. The Wall Street Journal reported that several executives had been essentially approached to see whether they could find a new CEO. Well, posting on X this morning, Elon Musk said it is an extremely bad breach of ethics that the Wall Street Journal would publish a deliberately false article, and failed to include an unequivocal denial beforehand by the Tesla board of directors. Meanwhile, the board's chair has also posted on X saying earlier today there was a media report erroneously claiming that the Tesla board had contacted recruitment firms to initiate a CEO search at the company. This is absolutely false, and this was communicated to the media before the report was published. The CEO of Tesla is Elon Musk, and the board is highly confident in his ability to continue executing on the exciting growth plan. Well, let's go to San Francisco, speak to Dan Ives, Global Head of Research, Technology Research and Managing Director of Wedbush Securities. Dan, very good morning to you as always. What's your sense of what's going on here? I mean, the Wall Street Journal would have been unlikely to report this unless something was happening.
Look, I mean, we've talked about it. There was massive pressure on Musk going into that call last week, because the reality is that the brand damage, the shareholder frustration, I think the board basically had to send a warning shot. I mean, that's sort of my interpretation of it. I think a lot of that's now in the rearview mirror, but Musk, he needed to get reined in, and I think that's the reality of the situation.
And get reined in, because when you look at the stats, they're quite stark. Profits down 70%, the share price down by over 800 billion. And let's be frank about this, in certain markets, the car is being bought less and less.
I mean, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, acts, I mean, it is a duck, right? I mean, so the reality is that the brand damage had a huge impact on Tesla. And the biggest asset for Tesla is Musk. And that's why, I think that was the most important conference call Musk has ever done. And that was a different Elon. I mean, a little more what I think reading the room. And I think it just shows. I mean, I think, and obviously Tesla's denying it, but the reality is that this was a moment of truth. Musk picked the right way. The stocks acted accordingly. And now they start to put this dark chapter in the rearview mirror. And you even saw it at the cabinet meeting yesterday. I mean, I think this is the end of Musk at the White House.
Well, I was just going to ask on that. I mean, we've read in recent days that he doesn't quite have the same access to the West Wing as he had. But there have been lots of suggestions that he was going to leave Doge completely, and that also doesn't seem to have happened. But you do think ultimately he's on his way out?
Yeah, I think it's the beginning of the end. Look, because the reality is, like, I mean, he could still maybe be at some meetings, over the next year or whatever. But look, for Musk, I mean, he has to lead Tesla. And that's why this was one of those moments. And I think there's a recognition that I think also this took on a life of its own that even he underestimated. And ultimately for Tesla, for the employees, for the shareholders, as a public company, the board has fiduciary responsibilities.
Dan, let's also talk, if we can, about the other big technology companies. Some of them have been reporting this week. I think we'll get Apple later on today, but we've seen Microsoft. And some of them are doing quite well. I mean, Microsoft shares today, I think, up, or they have been over the last 24 hours, nearly 9%.
It's a dream for a tech bull. I mean, and look, and we talked about last week in our checks, like the AI revolution is not getting stopped because of tariffs. to some extent, software is actually almost a safety blanket there. And you've seen the strong numbers on cloud from Alphabet, from Microsoft. You look at those Meta, the digital advertising strength, that's similar to what we saw with Alphabet as well. So look, Apple, obviously, they're blindfolded darts just given the tariffs, but tech is going to remain strong. And it's a bedrock in this market, a huge night last night for big tech bulls.
And just very finally on that, we've seen Donald Trump move quite a lot, must be said, when it comes to car manufacturers, clearly feeling some of the economic or political heat too. Do you think when it comes to tech, that will be the same going forward? I mean, for example, iPhones, Apple, again, we've seen exemptions talked about and made. All the kind of big tech bros, if you like, will Donald Trump listen to them in the end?
I mean, the market's basically saying he has to, because it all comes down to, Lutnick, Trump, whoever it is, Navarro. But then there's just the reality of how you actually make these products. And I think that's something where you continue to take steps back from the cliff, more and more exemptions. You'll have tariffs, obviously. You'll have negotiations with China. But I think markets basically saying Trump's going to have to back down. That's what's starting to get factored into these stocks.
OK, Dan, as always, absolute pleasure. In wee small hours there in San Francisco. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks.
Well, talking about tariffs and trade, a little known trade rule to tackle cheap imports from companies such as Shein and Temu will end tomorrow. It means that shipments valued at or below $800, which were previously exempt from tariffs, will now be subject to new duties and postal fees. Well, our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been looking at the implications for consumers and businesses.
What is the latest on tariffs? Well, let's just give you a bit of a primer. You're probably familiar with this, the big picture. We're looking at the US and the tariffs that they are imposing on China. Additional tariffs recently, you had that extra 10%, another extra 10% coming in March, another 10% coming in April, and then that massive 145% tariff rate on Chinese goods. China has retaliated, of course, but of course there's way more stuff coming in from China to the US than there is the other way around. But here's what's interesting, OK? So that's the big number facing Chinese goods. But some Chinese goods, up until now, haven't actually had to face that. And why is that? It's down to a rule called de minimis. Do you know about de minimis? Well, it's a little bit obscure, but you might well have encountered it. Because basically it says that if something is very cheap, then it basically costs more than you can gain by trying to impose tariffs on it. So take something, for instance, the UK, every country around the world, this is showing you the threshold at which this de minimis rule kicks in. In the UK, anything under £135, we don't charge customs on it because it's just seen as being too cheap and not worth it. In the US, that threshold is $800, a lot higher. And actually in the US, you've seen a big increase in goods coming into the US which are below that threshold and therefore don't pay customs. So up since 2018 by 146%. And what is that? A lot of it is fast fashion. It's places like Temu, so it's consumer goods, it's Shein, stuff that's coming in that's cheap, that's actually flown across from China. It's so cheap that it doesn't go over that threshold and you don't have to pay customs, therefore it's a lot cheaper. But here's what's interesting. Donald Trump says, and he signed this executive order back in early April, he said, we're getting rid of it. OK, so you are going to have to pay those customs rates. It's worth saying, he did say this once before and then kind of reversed it. But nonetheless, he says at the end of this week, that's going to come in. And what's interesting is, in the run-up to that, look at where these Temu, for instance, there's Temu, and here's Shein, Chinese cheap goods, which basically benefit from that what a lot of people see as a loophole. That was where they were on the App Store, so high up in terms of their ranking. Their ranking has fallen, so consumers basically are shunning these apps in advance. And why are they doing that? Well, if you look at the pricing that you're seeing on some of these sites, this is Shein, it's just taking a basket of goods and looking at how it's changed just over the course of 3 days. So 24th of April, that's how much the typical basket of goods was in the US, that's the UK price. And look at what happened the next day. Look at that bar. It went up, and it went up quite a lot. This is the next day after. That went down a tiny bit, but still up by 10.4%. And that's just overall. Some goods you're talking about up by kind of 300% for certain items. The UK's down, so that's the key thing. In the US, it looks very inflationary. As people are anticipating, you're going to have to start paying those tariffs, even on cheap goods. In the UK, basically no change. Though it's worth saying, Rachel Reeves does want to have a review on the UK's rules as well. Final thing to say, in advance of this, a lot of that stuff comes in on planes, but a lot of it also comes in on ships. And in advance of these tariffs kicking in, there's been a massive fall in the flow of ships across from China over the Pacific to the US, OK? And for some people, they look at that and they worry that might well signify empty shelves in stores.
Ed Conway there. There might be some good news, though, this morning, and that is for motorists, with a big drop in the price of fuel expected in the days ahead. That's because there's been a collapse in the Brent crude price this year, coupled with a strengthening of the pound versus the dollar, which is expected to drive down costs, hopefully, at the pumps. This is the price of Brent crude at the moment. As you can see, it's down more than 2.5% today at below $60 a barrel. Now, that in part is clearly because of Donald Trump's tariffs and concerns that that's going to hit the global economy and lead to a slower demand, of course, for oil. But also, investors braced for OPEC+, that's obviously the major oil producers, to boost output. So that is the price of Brent crude below $60 a barrel. You can get more on that, of course, on the Money blog. All you need to do is scan the QR code for the very latest money news. OK, you're watching Business Live here on Sky News. Coming up next, though, the head of Ikea on why it's opening a new store on London's Oxford Street. And that big question, is it Ikea or Ikea? That's up next.
Show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Very welcome back. Now, Ikea has opened its doors this morning at its brand new Oxford Street store. It's been seen as a vote of confidence in both central London and in the UK's high street. Well, ahead of its launch, I've been speaking to Jesper Brodin, who is the global chief executive of Inca Group, which is Ikea's parent company. Now, in a moment, I asked the big question, is it actually Ikea or Ikea? But first, I did ask, why Oxford Street and why now?
It's a dream come true, to be honest. We've been working with the concept of city stores and bringing IKEA closer to people in metropolitan areas for quite some years now. We have expanded into many cities, but I would say this is our biggest investment so far, and I think it's probably our coolest, most busy location as well.
When you say cool, what does that mean? Why is it cooler than the other Ikeas that our viewers
Well,
may
you
have
have
been
to come and see it, but you know, I would say I actually would think it's a little bit cooler than the average IKEA store. So it has a couple of components that we never tried before. We have everything from curated shops with Londoners have helped us curate some of the selections. We have worked with room settings, building homes and replicas of real families in London and their life situations. We have a live studio. I think it's the first of its kind in IKEA. We have a wonderful Swedish bistro and a lot more.
Well, we all love a meatball, there's no doubt about that. But just in regards to the store itself, I mean, this is obviously much smaller than most IKEA stores. What's the appeal? What are you trying to do here that the big out-of-town ones that people are more familiar with are not doing?
Well, it's been an interesting journey. I think for myself, it began when I took this job some 8 years ago, traveling the world, including London, meeting customers who in the omni-channel retail transformation, if you like, were honest to share with me that we like IKEA, we love IKEA, we want to go to the stores. But on a Tuesday night, when you put kids to bed and dishes are done, if you need to shop something, it either needs to show up on your phone or it needs to be around the corner. So what we try to do over the years is actually to make sure we bring IKEA closer to people. Now, the interesting thing, to be honest, we have made so many mistakes. I blame myself for that, but that's how you do innovation for real, right? So we try to be fancy. We try to shop up IKEA in different parts, only to understand from our customers that people like to see the whole range. People like to have the food opportunity, and people like to bring most of at least the small furniture with them on the same day. So that's what we're offering here, a true IKEA experience.
Is that why I think you did open a store, didn't you, in London in 2022 that didn't work out?
Right.
Those are the lessons you've learned, are they?
Yeah, we did. We did. I can write a book of all the mistakes we did. But to be honest, that's how you do it, right? When you step into a new era and you want to explore something, if you work in a linear way, it might just take a long time. So I think in IKEA, we honor entrepreneurship. We honor the right to learn by doing mistakes. And here we are today, I think, in a store with concepts that is not only on the big store concepts, but actually based on an 8 years innovation journey in IKEA worldwide.
Well, why do you have such confidence in the high streets? In the sense that I think Brits actually spend more per capita than almost anyone else on the planet online. We're very used to online shopping here, which your business is set up for. You're also on a street, Oxford Street. We like to regard it as our flagship street here in the UK, but it's littered with big department stores that have closed down. You're in the old Topshop shop that also has closed down. I mean, the high street isn't quite the draw it once was. Why have you got confidence in it?
Well, you know, the world belongs to optimists and sometimes naive as such. So let's see how the result will be in a few days, weeks and months in this location. But I would say I'm humble to what we don't know about how people will experience this store. But we do have several very interesting results from places like Paris, like Madrid, like Tokyo, where we have tried similar components. And it's actually working not only to give IKEA in the city itself a boost in market share and attention, but also contribute financially in a good way. So we'll just have to see.
OK, and just in terms of IKEA across the UK, I think it employs some 12,000 staff, 21 stores.
Right.
You know, running businesses in the UK has got more expensive in the last couple of months. I'm sure you know that, at least in the sense that, you know, we have increased tax in terms for employers. The minimum wage has gone up. Do you still think it is worthwhile? I mean, those extra costs do run into a lot of money.
Yeah, I would surprise you if I said no to that question, right? No, of course we think it's worthwhile. And when you look at the recent years from an Ikea total perspective and in UK as well, of course we've gone through quite tumultuous times, pandemic, war in Europe, economic turmoil and so forth. The biggest impact that we have had in our supply chain has come actually from the issues with stability during the pandemic period, which is obviously now in a much better place. We will continue to invest in UK in our expansion. We're going to continue to do our utmost to make sure that products are not only more affordable, but also increase the level of sustainability across the border. Where, by the way, the interesting fact in Ikea today is that through being climate smart and investing into sustainability, we actually reduce cost and are capable to meet people not only on Oxford Street, but across the whole country with lower prices.
OK, and just very finally, Jesper, I keep saying Ikea because that's what we say here in the UK, but that's not quite right, is it?
Well, you know what? I'm going to allow you to say whatever you like, but it's true that the right Swedish spelling would be Ikea. And the story for that is simply that when the founder, he was 60 years old when he founded the company, and he went to the registrate and he didn't have an idea for the name of the company. So then they took his initials, Ingvar Kamprad. So that's I in Swedish, I in English. Älmtaryd was the farm he was from, and Agunnaryd was basically the county. So Ikea or Ikea is basically the man himself and where he came from.
There you go, that's Jesper Bruden from Ikea. OK, that's it for me for the moment. Back at 4:30 this afternoon with Business Live. James Hecker is up next. I'll see you later. Goodbye.